Okay, we're going to be looking at finding a percent of a number. Every percent can be written as a fraction. Every percent is always out of 100 because 100% is a whole, and the denominator in the fraction tells you how many pieces make a whole. Think of if you got a whole test right, you get 100% because you got one whole test right. So this would be 120 over 100 is the same as 100%. Of is the operation multiplication. It's usually associated with multiplication. And 20, we're going to make a fraction so that we can multiply a fraction by a fraction, and that becomes 20 over 1. Because if one piece makes a whole, I have 20 pieces, that's still worth 20. Before I actually do the multiplication, I'm going to simplify 120 over 100. Both 120 and 100 are divisible by 10. I know this because they end in a 0. I'm not actually dividing by 10, but I'm dividing by 10 over 10, which is the same as dividing by a value of 1, and anything divided by 1 has that same value. So I'm not changing the value of 120%. But I am going to rewrite 120% then to become 12 tenths. Now both 12 and 10 are even numbers, which means they are divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide both the top and bottom by 2. I'm actually dividing by 2 over 2, which again is a value of 1. And that reduces to 6 fifths. So when I rewrite the problem 120% of 20, I will rewrite it as 6 fifths, which is also equal to 120%, times 20 over 1. So 6 fifths, again, that's our 120%. Multiplication is the word of, and 20 over 1 is the same as 20. When I multiply fractions, I simply multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. There was another video earlier about multiplying rational numbers that can show you as to why we do that. 6 times 20 is 120, and 5 times 1 is 5. When I go to write that in a mixed fraction form, I use mental math strategies, and I know that if I have 100 pieces, I could make 20 groups of 5 and 5 pieces as a whole. So I know I can at least make 20 wholes. That would take 100 of the 120 pieces, and I would have 20 pieces left out of the 5 it takes to make a whole. Well, I know that if it takes 5 pieces to make a whole and I still have 20, I can make 4 more wholes, so I get a total of 24. So 24 is 120% of 20. Another way to look at that would to be able to say 100% of 20 is 20, and 20% of 20 is the same as 20%, of course, is 20 over 100 of its multiplication, 20 over 1. 20% becomes 2 tenths times 20 over 1. 2 tenths, of course, can be reduced again to 1/5 of 20 over 1. Multiply straight across. 20 times 1 is 20. 1 times 5 is 5. And 20 over 5 is 4. Remember that the over sign is the same as division. So you could have also got 24 then by taking the 20 for the 100% and adding it to the 4 for the 20%. Now we're going to look at trying that again with 80% of 35. Now we know 80% is less than 100%, so it's less than one whole. 80%, like every percent, is out of 100. Of, we associate with multiplication, and 35 as a fraction becomes 35 over 1. Again, I'm going to reduce 80 hundredths before I try to multiply. Both of them are ending in a 0, which means they're divisible by 10. Actually dividing it by 10 over 10, or a value of 1. So 80 100ths becomes 8 tenths. Now 8 tenths, two even numbers, both divisible by 2. Again, I'm dividing it by a value of 1 whole because it's 2 over 2. And I get a value of 4 fifths. Because it's 80%, that we know is 4 fifths. Then I have the word of, that's multiplication. Then I have 35, which we made as 35 over 1. Once I get to that point, I just multiply straight across. I know that so I'm trying to find 4 times 35. Well, 2 times 35 I know is 70. So 4 times 35 is 140. And 5 times 1 is 5. These are my mental math strategies again. And again say I know that that can at least make 20 wholes, because 20 groups of 5 would have been 100 out of the 140. So there's 40 left over out of 5. And I know that if I have 40 pieces and 5 make a hole, I can make 8 more holes. So I get 28. So 28 is 80% of 35. Then I asked myself, does it make sense for it to be less than 35? And the answer is yes, because 80% is less than 100%, and 100% would have been 1 hole. So when you're finding a percent of a number, always make sure to turn the percent into a fraction. It helps to reduce it before you do the operation, but you can reduce it or simplify it at the end as well if that is easier for you.